Today's video is for anybody who ever watched an 80s action movie and found themselves rooting just a little bit for the villain because of how awesome and imposing they were. Many people have said that an action movie is only as good as its villain, that a hero can only reach the heights of supremacy that surpass the heavy hitters they have to take down along the way. So today we're talking about the 80s villains who I think delivered that pure final boss domination. These were the guys who commanded a scene instantly with simple screen presence. These dudes weren't henchmen, nor were they merely speed bumps along the path to success for our favorite heroes. These bad guys were jacked, they were imposing, some mythical, and all of them were fixtures in my childhood with their tormenting of our favorite action heroes, serving up endless amounts of nostalgia. So tighten up the headbands, sneak in a few push-ups, and keep the med packs handy because episode 1 is going to hit like a cinder block shot out of a cannon.
Prediction.
What's up out there, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is Movies Never Say Die. I'm Anthony DeJoya, and this is your home for 80s and 90s retro movie talk, and this is my new series covering the great movie villains from the 1980s. The goal here is pretty simple, is to shine a spotlight on the villains who weren't just the bad guys. These guys were the 80s action max difficulty setting that I think made some of our favorite action movies so memorable. Because with the right villain in place, the hero can have heart, charm, and a theme song that slaps, but none of that matters when the opposition looks like they were carved out of granite, trained in a secret dojo, and fueled by pure psychotic intimidation. So in this kickoff episode, we're covering the guys I call the final boss freaks. You definitely remember the type. The moment they showed up, the movie stopped being a breeze for our hero, and suddenly the outlook for success looked more than a little dicey. These final bosses, they didn't just throw punches or kick swings, they brought a whole persona, a presence, a signature style, and really endless gravitas to make their imprints indelible. So today we're going to scale the Mount Rushmore of final bosses. I have 5 iconic showdown specialists who I think turned climaxes into ultimate collisions and made our heroes earn every inch of their victory. These guys represented, I think, the happy and the happy endings our favorite action movies provided us. So without any further delay, let's get into it. All right, first up, we're kicking the door down with a villain who doesn't enter the ring, he invades it. This guy is pure pressure cooker, zero manners, all muscle, 100% piss and vinegar from Rocky III, played by the one and only Mr. T. This is Clubber Lang. Now, to me, Clubber Lang is one of those villains who shows up and immediately makes the hero's entire life feel like it's been running on easy mode. No fancy schemes or chess master monologues. Clubber's plan is pretty plain and simple. It's to walk right through you to get what he wants. And to me, what makes him so effective is that he just feels real. Not realistic, but real, like the kind of hungry contender who's been watching from the cheap seats and just fighting his way up the ranks with his teeth clenched, just lying in wait for the champ to get comfortable. And that's the magic of Mr. T. He doesn't play Clubber Lang like a typical movie bad guy. He plays him like a man who woke up and went to sleep on the wrong side of the bed. Everything about him is absolutely direct. The stare, the posture, the voice that lands like a right hook. And what Mr. T does brilliantly is give Clubber a personality that's, I think, bigger than the boxing movie plot. Now, I grew up loving Rocky III like many of you did, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree that when you just chose to pull this movie off the shelf for a rewatch, it was often because you wanted to see Clubber Lang. He wasn't just the next opponent. He actually took the champ down with the intensity of a hungry pit bull. So Clubber was the physical embodiment of consequences. Rocky's living the good life, smiling for the cameras. He's doing the celebrity circuit, and Clubber was the reminder that somebody out there is always training like they have something to prove to the world, and really that's Clubber's impact. He isn't slick or polished, he's the hyper-realistic version of the biggest bully you remember from high school, magnified by a million. And I think Mr. T absolutely amplifies this role by making it feel personal without it ever getting complicated. He's pure raw aggression and gold chains, a walking furnace, set to high heat. All he wants is the belt. So when he talks, it's not poetry, it's pure impact in the form of a baby-oiled wrecking ball with a pristine mohawk. And all I can remember is that feeling of shock as a kid when he took down Rocky in their first match, even if I'd seen it a dozen times. Now, pop culture wise, Clubber Lang I think is a permanent 80s timestamp. I think he's the template for final boss challenger in sports movies, the unstoppable force that forced the hero to evolve, and Mr. T took that energy and carried it straight into the mainstream. The look, the voice, the presence. Mr. T commits so hard that I think Clubber Lang doesn't feel like a character that came and went. He is essentially the sports movie warning that the 80s left behind, which is never get comfortable because someone meaner was always doing some push-ups and some pull-ups somewhere in a dimly lit room and poised for a training montage of their own. Next up, we're going from street-level fury to a Cold War Goliath in boxing gloves. This villain doesn't talk trash, he doesn't posture, he just shows up like a machine programmed to destroy. From Rocky IV, played by the human action figure himself, Dolph Lundgren, this is Ivan Drago. Now, Ivan Drago is what happens when a sports movie villain becomes a global event. Country versus country, man versus man. So where Clubber Lang felt like he was the hungriest man in the room, Drago kind of feels like he's already eaten and simply wants to demolish the room with his fists. And I think that's why he's so effective. He's not just an opponent, he's basically a monster in human form. And what Dolph Lundgren brings to Drago, outside of his lights out physique and a full serving of vanity muscles, is restraint. And in an 80s blockbuster, that was a superpower when delivered properly. And what I enjoy is that Lundgren doesn't play him like a cackling bad guy loaded with a bunch of pre-programmed one-liners. He kind of plays him like a human weapon that's been activated and pointed in a direction. Minimal words, maximum menace, and the stillness in Drago is his intimidation, while his dead stare puts in all the overtime, and then he unleashes and Lundgren shines. It's really the kind of performance where you can practically hear the hydraulic pistons in his shoulders as he demolishes Creed, and then Rocky as well to an extent, despite ultimately taking the L. Now, foundationally, Rocky IV as a movie builds Ivan Drago up like a myth, and the contrast in both the writing and the performances I think is perfect for the needs of this movie. Rocky is pure grit, heart, and I'll run up this mountain if I have to. Drago, on the other hand, is polish and technology with a complete team that looks like they come included with a lifetime membership to Globo Gym.
Because here at Globo Gym, we're better than you, and we know it.
Drago is just the embodiment of the future is now, and I think Lundgren makes this character feel inhuman but not cartoonish. He's intimidating because he's quiet, because he doesn't seem emotional, because he doesn't look impressed or intimidated by anything. He's the kind of villain where the hero's usual skill set just bounces off like it hit a steel plate, and then when Drago finally does speak, you never forget his words, and that famous, just icy detachment isn't just a line delivery, it's the entire Ivan Drago persona. So really that's the imprint that he leaves on pop culture. He became the pinnacle for the unstoppable foreign super athlete. Drago was the final boss from another system. The character is so iconic that people who don't even watch boxing movies can quote him, parody him, meme him, and instantly understand what he represents. And honestly, as a kid, Drago felt larger than life. I still tear up a little bit when Apollo falls to the mat for the final time, and growing up watching Rocky IV like it was a Saturday morning cartoon, there is no doubt that Drago gave this movie the David and Goliath matchup that it absolutely needed. Because I think Ivan Drago encapsulates the 80s as a whole, but in villain form. Bigger stakes, bigger muscles, a bigger symbolism, training montages that feel like a national budget got approved for production. I also think Drago just amplifies Rocky IV's whole intensity. The movie is already operating at maximum volume, and I think Drago is the reason it works. Without him, it's just another title defense, and with him, it becomes an ideological battle. I think Lundgren's presence makes every scene feel heavier, and the character, just by looking at him, is terrifying, no doubt, but he's also weirdly elegant in how simple the character is. No complicated psychology, no backstory, speeches, just pure I'm here to win motivation. All right, guys, I hope you're still with me. For this next dude, we're going to leave the bright lights of the arena and we're going to step into that smoky underground winner takes all zone where the rules are basically a suggestion and the fights are often to death. This villain doesn't really feel like a challenger at all. He feels like a final test riddled with trick questions and bad intentions. From Bloodsport, played by Bolo Yeung, this is Chong Li. Now, Chong Li is the kind of martial arts villain who doesn't just beat his opponents, he dominates them, and it's entirely because Bolo Yeung shows up looking like he was sculpted out of granite and fueled on pain. The dude's physique is unreal, his pecs and lats were off the charts, but the real intimidation is the guy's vibe. He's calm, confident, cruel, he doesn't need to be loud, he doesn't need to rush, he kind of fights like he already knows he's won and that he's always superior to his competition. And I definitely think Bolo takes what could have been just a standard tournament bully role and makes it iconic through his screen presence alone. His expressions are really doing half the work of the dialogue. That little smile, the dead stare, the way he stands there like he's bored by the concept of opposition. It's not just his strength, it's his certainty, and his certainty is terrifying because it gives the hero's determination a glimmer of insignificance. Now, to me, what makes Chong Li such a great bad guy is that he's not complicated, but he's not empty either. He's not trying to win for honor. He's not fighting for his family's name. He's fighting because he's the apex predator in the room and he likes to be reminded of it. And really, he is the embodiment of that 80s martial arts movie fear, the unbeatable fighter with brutal efficiency who makes everybody else's style look like an after-school hobby. Even if you don't remember his name, you remember his presence. He also amplifies Bloodsport's whole myth-making. The movie already has that legend of the underground fight world thing going on for it, and Chong Li is the perfect alpha in the room that gives the Kumite its legitimacy. I mean, growing up, Chong Li felt like a villain who'd seen his share of fights, so when he battled Van Damme, it was epic no matter how many times I sat on the living room floor watching. Because in the buildup of squaring off against Chong Li, it's not just can the hero win, it's can the hero survive long enough to even put up a fight, making Bolo Yeung's imprint stretch far beyond this movie. He's one of the most recognizable faces in martial arts cinema, and Chong Li is the role that turned Bolo Yeung into a forever villain in the best way. The performance in this movie is mostly physical, absolutely, but it's also about character clarity. He's ruthless, he's confident, absolutely uninterested in inspirational speeches, and Chong Li is the villain who I think makes the hero's journey necessary and ultimately fulfilling because he is the truly unstoppable force at the end of our hero's montage. All right, now we're going to take a small sidestep into that late 80s kickboxing zone where the villains didn't just fight to damage your body, they fought psychologically to damage your mind and your spirit as well. This next guy wasn't a trash talker, he was a walking red flag of classless violence. From Kickboxer, played by Michel Qissi, this is Tong Po. Now, I definitely think Michel Qissi makes Tong Po unforgettable because he commits to the role like it's a physical performance called terrorizing. The posture, the grin, the odd way he moves about like he enjoys being the scariest guy in the room without even trying. Tong Po doesn't need an elaborate backstory because the movie gives you a quicker summary.
Look at this fucking guy.
Now imagine going out there and trying to beat him. That's pretty much the plot of this movie because no 80s movie villain was more from parts unknown than Tong Po. He was a complete freak to me as a kid and seemed like some blend of a man and an animal and an alien, like a manimalian. But what Qissi does really well is blend brutality with the kind of smug confidence that makes Tong Po feel sleazier and meaner. A lot of villains rely on their size, and Tong Po definitely had that, but he also has this casual cruelty that just sells the sleaze and violence that he delivers. He's not just trying to win, he's trying to dominate, humiliate, and remind everybody in the room that pain is his native language. And in the context of Kickboxer, I think Tong Po amplifies everything. The film is built around transformation, the hero getting broken down and rebuilt into someone who can actually stand in the fire, and Tong Po is the reason that journey doesn't feel optional. I think he raises the stakes from can you win this fight to can you even step into the ring with this guy without becoming a cautionary tale. So in terms of his pop culture imprint, I think Tong Po is peak VHS era villain mythology. He's one of those names that still gets said with a little extra spice simply from the fond memories of watching him challenge Van Damme. He's also tied to some of the most memorable imagery from the whole late 80s martial arts boom, the kind of scenes that really just got rewound hundreds of times on a worn out tape because everybody wanted to see the final fight one more time. I mean, even people who haven't watched Kickboxer in years can still remember the idea of Tong Po, his ponytail and his brutal fist dipped in honey and broken glass, and that entire finale was so iconic to us as kids who pretend fought in the living room while we watched it. And Qissi as a performer I think deserves a ton of credit because he's not a mainstream celebrity villain or a household name actor, but he still created a character that felt like a legend, and that really was the beauty of these movies, wasn't it? That sometimes the villain just needed to have convincing physicality and a stare that could make the audience sit up a little bit straighter while also delivering a presence that made the hero's training montage feel even more necessary. And Tong Po was that. He's old school, no speeches, no redemption arc, no sudden soft spot, just a dangerous grin and the kind of menace that just makes the hero's victory feel like an accomplishment the audience can cheer for, like they did all the training with them. Because when Tong Po is the final obstacle, the happy ending wasn't just winning, it was getting out alive. Now for this next guy, we're going to swerve out of pure brutality zone and into something even rarer, a villain who fights like a final boss and performs like a headlined act. This next guy doesn't just enter the room, he announces himself to the world. From The Last Dragon, played by Julius Carrey, this is Sno'Nuff.
Sno'Nuff! Am I the baddest mofo low down around this time? Sno'Nuff!
Now, Sno'Nuff is proof that sometimes the final boss was better when loud and theatrical, and that sometimes bad guy was awesome when they were basically the villain version of a stadium entrance, complete with backup performers, catchphrases, and the kind of confidence that you see when a pro wrestler makes their grand entrance. And really, that's why Julius Carrey absolutely crushes this role. He doesn't just play Sno'Nuff, he owns the real estate of every scene he's in. The voice, the swagger, the timing, the way he carries himself around this movie like he's already been crowned. Carrey understands that Sno'Nuff isn't just supposed to be a threat, he's an event, a walking challenge to the hero's entire identity, not just his fighting ability. And I think what makes Sno'Nuff so good is the balance. He's funny without becoming a joke, he's absolutely outrageous without losing the menace, and that's really hard to pull off for this type of a character. I mean, a lot of villains with huge personalities turn into cartoon speed bumps. Sno'Nuff does not. There's real intimidation under the performance, and it's because Carrey plays him like a man who genuinely believes the hype. And when I watched this movie as a kid and even now, he's still as comical as he is threatening. No pretending, no posturing, just believing in that belief is what makes him dangerous. And in doing so, he amplifies The Last Dragon's whole flavor. This movie is a perfect 80s blender. Martial arts, music video energy, street style, romance, comedy, and that neon New York fantasy vibe. And Sno'Nuff fits it like a custom glove because he's as much showbiz as he is a fighter. He's really the physical manifestation of this movie's entire attitude. Bold, loud, stylish, and totally committed to its own universe. My friends and I loved this movie growing up, and it was because of Sno'Nuff and the hyper-realistic spectacle that he charged the whole ride with. And that's why Sno'Nuff is immortal. He's one of those characters who escaped the movie and became a reference point in pop culture. People quote him, they cosplay him, they nod to him in jokes, and the moment you see that look and that swagger, you know exactly who it is. He's become the definition of over-the-top confidence, but again here, the key is that it's not empty. It's a character with presence, and Carrey made sure that Sno'Nuff wasn't just the villain, he made sure that he became a timeless personality. Because Sno'Nuff just has that kind of charisma that makes you excited when he shows up, because you know the movie is about to get more entertaining, and really, that is the secret sauce. He's threatening, but he's also fun. He's the villain you would definitely want to party with because he raises the stakes and the volume at the same time. Sno'Nuff was a final boss who really understood branding before branding was a thing. He's got a name you don't forget, an attitude you can't ignore, a whole presence about him, and an entrance that feels like the whole movie just hit the chorus. And in a decade full of scary bruisers and icy super athletes, Sno'Nuff stood out because he was something else entirely, a villain who fought with flair before his fists and feet. And that's a wrap on episode 1, Final Boss Freaks, 5 heavyweight nightmares who didn't just challenge the hero, they were the pinnacle of excellence. Our heroes needed to surpass to actually become heroes. Now, before you guys bounce out, if you want more rental shelf goodness, I got you covered. You can head over to Friday Night Rentals, my playlist that covers plenty of 80s cult favorites and hidden gems, or you can crack open the VHS Vault playlist for plenty of 90s deep cut gems and nostalgia soaked rewatches. Now for the next episode of this series, I'm coming back with another batch of villains who bring a whole new flavor of chaos, different vibes, but same bad guy problem the hero is going to have to level up to deal with or get deleted. So be on the lookout for that coming real soon. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. I appreciate all of you guys watching my videos. It really means a lot to me. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave it a like, drop me a comment, and if you haven't done so yet, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. So until the next time, keep those tapes rewound, keep that tracking steady, and remember, movies never say die.
Jack Burton and the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Flag of war. You gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?